To this Thursday, August 19th, Transportation Advisory Board meeting for the City of Issaquah. My name is Sujata Goyal. I'm the Vice Chair of the board of this board. Our Chair, Cynthia, is here in attendance tonight. However, due to some recent dental surgery, she will be chatting in the chat or typing in the chat more than she'll be able to verbally speak tonight. So I will fumble us through this meeting as the facilitator. So I want to go ahead and it's 6 p.m. It's 6:04 p.m. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Due to the Governor's Proclamation 20-28 related to the COVID-19 emergency and open public meetings, this meeting is being held remotely. Also, in the previous months that we've been meeting remotely, our meetings have been live streamed. Tonight, we'll be recording our meeting and it will be available to the public later. So that's just something to note. I think now we can go ahead and move on to the approval of the minutes. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from July 15th, 2021?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Great, thank you. And then do we have a second?
I'll second. Christy Triple.
Thank you, Christy. And all in favor? It looks like everyone is in favor. Any not in favor? Okay, I guess that means as a unanimous vote, we approve the minutes from July 15, 2021. So now we'll go ahead and move into the public comment portion of the meeting. And just a few things about public comment. If you could use your name, address, and or relationship to the city, and limit your comments to about 3 minutes, that would be great. Actually, Isabel, do we have anyone in line for public comment tonight?
I have not seen anyone wanting to share their public comments so far.
Okay.
There's one attendee. Let me see. Oh, no, that's David. So no public comments.
Okay, so no public comments. We're a little bit ahead of the agenda. Does that matter?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right, well, if there are no public comments right now, we can move on to the fun, regular business of the meeting. But if someone does come online and is interested in providing public comment, maybe that's something we can put in later in the meeting as well. We always want to make sure people who take the time to be here, have the opportunity to provide public input. And then, so tonight, our regular business, we're going to be talking about the tip. Cynthia actually and I have discussed in the past, and we know that everybody on this board has a lot of good opinions and ideas, and that's why they are taking their time every evening or one evening a month to be a member of the board. But just a couple things to note: if there's something someone is saying and you agree, feel free to just sort of say, I agree, or something like that, and put it in the chat. And then we can mention, that this is something that's strongly supported by the board. That could be a way to sort of increase the amount of participation. The other thing is, share the error if you find or feel that you are, maybe speaking more than some of the other board members. Take a pause before your next comment and give some of the other members an opportunity to also share what they think. And then I'll try to follow the orders in order of public, of people who raise their hand for speaking. I'll try to follow that order in the chat. But again, we really just want to make sure that we're hearing from everyone. Everyone's a member of this board, and everyone's opinions really do matter. And so we want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity to share. Cynthia will be typing into the chat, and I will be reading her feedback as we go along as well. And basically, yeah, it's really, as we're going through the tip, it's always so fun to get down into the details, but if there's anything, I think that maybe from a staff perspective, they're looking more for direction, guidance, kind of what we're trying to accomplish or what outcome we're looking for more than maybe design specifics. And so if it's more a matter of, we want intersections that are safe, that's maybe more the approach to the comment versus sort of designing or attempting to design a safe intersection. But when we can all meet again, we will definitely maybe do a design one evening because that would be a lot of fun. But for now, in the tip, the kind of feedback the staff will really want and be looking for is sort of more what we're trying to achieve in our in the improvements that we're proposing. So with that, I'll hand it over to Isabel and she can begin the presentation.
Okay, if you give me just a few seconds while I start sharing my presentation. Is it coming up okay, my presentation? Okay, thank you, Sujata. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I am Isabel. I will be discussing tonight our TIP project review. We will be following up on our previous discussions that we have had in the past few meetings. Also, with me as support is John. He will be helping tonight with the presentation, asking questions and providing more information. So tonight we will be providing, first of all, an overview of the TIP review timeline and where we are in the process. We will provide a brief overview of the proposed future projects. The format that we will be following is first to have a brief description of the project and its goals. We will provide an estimate on the costs and also would propose the changes that we will be proposing. Then we will turn back after each project, each discussion of the project, we will turn back to get the feedback from the board. The feedback from the board that we will be asking will be based basically on two main questions for most of the projects, but there will be some of them that the feedback might change. But for the most part, these two main questions that we will be asking the board are the project goals accomplished with the proposed improvements that we are presenting? And if not, then what could we change to accomplish those goals? Of course, we also welcome the board to provide any suggestions on project scope changes as well. As for the project updates and what we have done so far, back in June, we have discussed the projects underway. Last month, we talked about mandated and annual projects, where we discussed the strategic small capital improvements projects. And tonight, we will continue the discussion of the TIP, but we will be focusing on future projects. And for the next couple of months, we will continue with our discussions for the TIP and the following steps. Before we go into discussing each project, and we added this slide to kind of define what level of traffic stress is, because we will be mentioning, you will be listening to the term LTS2 often, and we wanted to kind of provide a reminder of what we mean when we talk about LTS1 or TS2. So the level of traffic stress is used to explain LTS for bike facilities. The LTS, or level of traffic stress, assigns categories of cyclists to different levels of comfortability using a system. These are categorized in LTS 1 through 4, and these are included in the Mobility Master Plan. So for LTS 1, when we talk about LTS 1, that means that's the level of comfort that most children and parents would feel comfortable or safe using a system. An example of a LTS 1 facility would be fully protected bike lanes. LTS 2 refers to the level of comfort that a typical adult has, where they may accept some degree of stress. And an example of an LTS2 facility would be like buffered lanes, some multiple vehicle lane facility. LTS3 is for riders who tolerate stress, some level of stress, but would prefer to ride on lower type of stress. And an example of a facility for LTS3 would be a standard bike lane on a multiple lane, where it's starting to get a little bit uncomfortable for many riders. The LTS4 is for riders who tolerate any kind of stress. Those are defined as aggressive, fearless drivers, and they are comfortable riding with traffic, along with traffic. An example of that is the mixed use of bicycle riders along with vehicle lanes. So these are the 4 level of traffic stress when we refer to that number with bike facilities. So this map, and this is just to kind of have a brief overview of where the future projects are. So we are going to just very briefly go through all of them so you have an idea where they are, but then we will be discussing each of those projects individually. So we have Juniper Street Improvements Project, which runs from Newport Way to Gilman. The 3 Trails Crossing, second phase, is at the intersection of Juniper and Gilman. Southeast 56th bike lane is right here, and this one would run from 220th and East Lake Sammamish Parkway. Tier 1 sidewalk gaps, and you may recall that from our previous discussion, we talked about the tiers where the Mobility Master Plan assigns projects for filling of sidewalk gaps, and we will present that later in a few minutes. Gilman and 3rd Avenue shared use path. This project runs between Front and Sunset along this area. 220th bike lanes. This is right here, and this one would go from 56th Avenue to East Lake Sammamish Parkway. Tier 2 sidewalk gaps, we will show a reminder of that map later. Sunset Way multimodal improvements is this one right here. This one would go from Front Street, but all the way to, didn't highlight this one very well, but it would go all the way to I-90 ramps. The restriping of Black Nugget would run from East Lake Sammamish Parkway all the way to Issaquah Falls City Road. 2nd Avenue sidewalk, this one is right here. It would be at the lower portion of 2nd Avenue, and the improvements would be on the east side of the street. Squack Mountain uphill bike lane and sidewalk is about this area here. It would run through along Mount Olympus, and it'll be between Markham, about this area, all the way through Fairwood Boulevard. Front Street and Dogwood. This is this intersection right here. And then with West Lake Sammamish Parkway corridor improvements on this area here, kind of on the western portion of the city limits from 180 to 186. So we have, as we mentioned on the previous slide, we have two projects that are to fill sidewalk gaps. And you may recall this figure from our previous discussion when we separated tiers between, with the different colors, tiers inside throughout the city. And just as a reminder, so these two projects are to fill gaps in Tier 1 and Tier 2. For Tier 1, we are including filling about 24,000 linear feet of sidewalks. If we recall what Tier 1 meant back from our latest discussions, these are for enhanced facilities on both sides of arterials and collectors inside Central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands. This is why we are seeing these areas here inside 17th Avenue is one example, East Lake Sammamish Parkway, 62nd, Highlands, and some sections of 9. For the Tier 2, there's, which is the one in kind of the magenta color. This is where I'd say most of the projects of filling up sidewalks are. This would include about 230,000 feet of sidewalk gaps to fill up. The Tier 2, if we remember from previous discussion, the Tier 2 would include standard sidewalks on both sides on the areas that are within 1/4 of a mile from schools, senior centers, public amenities, and local streets that are inside Central Issaquah, Old Town, and Issaquah Highlands. So now this is where we start discussing each project in the, oh, actually, I forgot something before we move further. I forgot the most important thing is to get the board feedback on these two projects. So Tier 1 and Tier 2 are two separate projects, but what we would like to get, I know this one is a little bit different from the other projects where we talk about specific improvements. Here we are filling gaps on sidewalks, and there's this map with many areas to consider. For Tier 1 and Tier 2, what the board thinks are the areas that we should be focusing on, that we should be paying more attention, those areas that we feel like there's much need to fill those gaps. I will look at Sujata, how we can encourage the board to provide feedback or comments on this one.
Yeah, I mean, so I can start and then other people, add your information to the chat or whatever. But as far as like how you would prioritize which one of the squiggles we do first or second, I think what might be interesting is to look at the priorities as far as I think you did a good job of concentrating on the downtown, but is there, pieces of downtown maybe that get more foot traffic, more in the business areas, where it would be easier for residents to, get from one business to another without having to get in their cars. So is, maybe, improving those areas where there's some economic activity happening for the city and the schools. Those feel like the two, if you had to pick which squiggles to do first, those are probably the ones I would vote for, but let's see what others think. Julian, you have a comment?
Yeah, kind of going off the line of Sujata, but a few other comments. I can see some of the squiggles are along Front Street, and I think that's very appropriate. I do think there needs to be more protection against vehicles in the high-speed areas and high-throughput areas. I do know that a lot of the sidewalks that are already present there on like Front Street, they're just very insufficient in terms of protection against motor traffic, the high-speed motor traffic. And another place to focus is the residential areas, the more compact residential areas, and especially those that connect to the business districts. So those are my 2 comments for now.
And then Jerry had asked a question if cost was included.
Yeah, so for the cost, it will depend on how much of these we are going to or which areas we are going to focus, and we can come back with the cost on this one. But yeah, it would depend on which areas we will be doing the improvements. Jerry has another comment, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry has a comment.
Okay, real quick, I thought one of the criteria was record of perhaps accidents and how the transportation group within Issaquah sees the danger of some intersections over others. And is that a way that you've also been prioritizing them?
So for these, we are not on the tiers. We are not providing priorities on specific areas right now. But the rest of the projects, yes, these are projects that we have chosen to discuss based on many different elements, and you will, as we go through them later tonight, you will find there's some of them that we have either proposing changes of have been included based on accident history.
Okay. I think, so I know we have quite a few of these to get through. So the priorities I'm hearing right now are, connecting communities to schools, connecting our business centers, ensuring where there's residential that connects to schools and businesses, so those areas can become more dense and walkable, and then really identifying if there are any sites that had the crash or safety areas, and making sure that those are sort of the top priority. But then after addressing kind of the safety concerns in the city or areas where there have been accidents, then moving on to connecting the schools and businesses, as far as like how you prioritize the squiggles. And so if anyone has any other ideas, or agrees or disagrees, if you want to just we could add that. We can discuss that now.
I also wanted to add that connection to transit centers and bus stops should also be prioritized.
Thank you.
Transit centers and bus stops, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Cynthia has a comment. She's saying that we probably will have to do another round of criteria review. And I think that'll be, maybe that is something that can get done as we're evaluating, and the other comment she's making or describing is that, for example, off Holly Street maybe could be a lower priority. But I think what could maybe help. So if this is sort of the outcome we're looking for as far as these, schools, businesses, transit centers, and safety areas, that's sort of the big outcome that the board is looking for, then maybe the idea is on an annual basis, as you forward see, like, hey, our tip for next year is going to have this much money for tier 1, tier 2 sidewalk gaps. And then maybe you guys could come back to us prior to this, as you're prioritizing which one of these squiggles you want to fill in, you could come back to the board and say, okay, here's what we, of all of these are the 3 we want to do, just checking in. That could maybe be a way to make sure that kind of as a community-based board, the priorities we see are lining up with the way the city wants to prioritize. So that could be something we do as as you're starting to get more in the weeds.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Cynthia is saying, we had more general criteria to define the tiers, but within the tiers, maybe doing some more systematic prioritization.
Okay. Within each tier.
Yeah.
Sujata, I wanted to pop in here with the comment earlier about transit centers. I would also like to see more emphasis on where the future development will be coming. Hyla Crossing and the Rowley Center areas. I don't see as many squiggly lines on the east side of Highway 900, perhaps. I think there could be more developed sidewalks there. And the light rail station probably coming around in that area. I think that's a really important place to make sure that area is walkable.
Thank you, Julian. So yeah, so again, Isabel, it sounds like we have, and the more we discuss, the bigger the priorities will become. But so these are some of the kind of bigger level, higher level priorities we're looking at. And so again, as you start knowing what your future annual budget is going to look like for this kind of bucket of money, maybe kind of coming back and identifying which specific projects you can get to. It's something the board could provide
Yes.
more specific input on at that time.
Yeah, that's something we can do, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other comments, I'll move on to the first project. For Juniper Street improvements, the main goal of this project is to improve vehicular and pedestrian safety and to provide non-motorized connection between Newport Way and existing trails. And we will be doing so by building 12 feet multi-purpose trail on the north side, and on the south side build sidewalks only. This project, as it's currently defined, it includes curb and gutter, drainage system, but there's landscaping and illumination as well. There's a portion of the roadways that are already built to this standard, so this project will complete the trail along with the road improvements. One important thing to note with this project is that SEPA environmental documentation will be needed to be able to complete this project, and we will also need to determine right-of-way and acquisition needs. The approximate cost of this project goes over $2 million. And the change that we are proposing for this project is just to, on the project limits, to specifically include those portions that are not completed, like the segments between Newport and 7th and between Issaquah, Coffee, Driveway, and Gilman approximately. So on this area here, we are providing kind of a section where we are keeping the 2 lanes of the road. We are providing 6-foot on the south side of the street where we are only providing sidewalk, there will still be planners, either illumination or planning, and this right here is showing us a sidewalk, but it'll be the shared use path. It'll be shared between pedestrians and bicyclists. If we go back and think about what the goal is for this project, which is to improve the vehicular and pedestrian safety, and to provide a motorized connection between Newport Way and the existing trails. What does the board feel like we are meeting our goals with the proposed scope of the project that we are showing, or are there any other changes that the board suggests to make sure that we accomplish our goals?
Okay, and so Isabel, as people are thinking of the answer, we have a couple of questions. So I'll let Micah has a question.
Yeah, so looking at the diagram and looking at Northwest Juniper Street, it looks like we're I don't know, maybe about doubling or more than doubling the paved surface. And I'm wondering, for this and for other projects for that matter, does Issaquah, are there any plans for some of the hybrid surfaces that are available? I'm sure there's a technical term for them, but where they're semi-porous. I've seen ones that are almost like a grid, and like grass or something can grow in it, but it's still, because it has some structure, it's still something you can easily ride a bike on, you can walk on, just to kind of keep a little more of the natural look and also the permeability of a non-paved surface.
Seems like you're asking about pervious surfaces, and for that I will possibly phone a friend, and maybe John might have some thing to answer to that.
Yes. First of all, check to see, is my mic working okay? I switched headphones.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
good. There's a couple things on that. We can evaluate permeable pavement, which is a little bit different than what you're talking about, because it would look, or permeable sidewalk, because it would look more like sidewalk, or pavement, but be permeable. I think what you're talking about, where you'd have the concrete blocks and the grass area in between, that would have a hard time meeting the ADA standards. So I'd shy away from that. But when we do our stormwater evaluation, we look at the feasibility of if we can have permeable concrete or some sort of treatment like that. It doesn't always work out for a variety of reasons, but it's something that we can incorporate into our stormwater evaluation.
Thank you. And then Micah, you also had I'm sorry, Julian, you also had a question?
Yeah, it had to do with the scope of the ending of this project, I guess. How will you tie this into the Newport Way project, and particularly for the roundabout that will be at the end of this project?
Yes, at this moment, the way it's described, it is not showing like we are considering intersection improvements for for Newport, but is there any particular changes or concerns that you are thinking about for the intersection?
Well, I did think that in the Newport Way project, with the expansion, there was going to be a roundabout here on Juniper. But I guess if there isn't going to be, then that question is moot.
So, John, is this portion of Newport the one that you are working on the design, or wouldn't be covered with this area?
Yeah, this project would tie into the roundabout, and timing wise, I anticipate that the new roundabout at Juniper and Newport would get built first, and this one would be tying into the non-motorized facilities on that project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. And then Jerry, you had a question?
I hope this doesn't get too involved in design, so let me know if it does. But I just happen to know on the south side, there's already an existing sidewalk by the storage area. And so couldn't you use that instead of the sidewalk you're showing? Or are you talking further? I guess it's further east. So, and let me know if I'm getting off track. And
Yeah,
then
so
we
no,
can forget
no,
that.
no worries.
That's
So
okay.
there are portions that we do have the sidewalks, and it's not, and those south part of the sidewalks are meeting the standards. So what we are trying to accomplish here is to fill those areas that does not have the sidewalk built to our standards. It wouldn't be like we will be rebuilding or tearing the sidewalk apart, and that's basically the reason why we are including the changes on the scope of this work. So we focus on only on those areas that do not have the sidewalk or the path.
Thank you. And then Cynthia had a comment. Find Cynthia's comment. Everything moves when somebody else comments. So comment from Cynthia is that she's generally not a fan of bike ped shared use facilities. And she was wondering if there was something about this street that makes this more appropriate for a shared use facility versus separated. And also wondering with the growth of e-assist bikes, that maybe this becomes a little bit more of a sketchy proposition to have bike ped in the same 12-foot area.
Yeah, so reason and John, feel free to jump in if there's anything else to add. But it is, to my understanding, the reason is because that's the facility that we currently have, and what we are trying to accomplish is to fill those gaps. If we think about changing it to something different, then we will have to discuss of further bigger changes to the scope or the project. To make it easier is just filling those gaps where we already have that shared use path. But other than that, yeah, would be changing the bike facility of the area. I don't know if John has anything else to add on to that.
I'll add a little bit in that there have been some other plans that put the shared use path on Juniper, and so we'd have to go back and change those. I kind of like the idea of separating it, although I don't know if it would be feasible. We also got to be mindful of the right of way that we have and trying to keep this project within a reasonable budget. But I think as we look at developing this project, that's something that we could look into in more detail.
Okay, thank you. And then let's think. Janie had a comment. Janie, do you want to say your comment or should I just read it? I think it's a very
Sure,
good.
I could say it. I just didn't know.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's your time. But yeah, so just to go back to your original question as well, I think that this what you have here meets what we were discussing previously about the goals to connect the gaps in the sidewalk to residential spaces. The school is over here. There's the Gilman Shopping Center. And then it also, that the picture that's on the slide, if we built the sidewalk there, it would connect to the Newport sidewalk that goes to the transit center. So I think it meets those goals. And then to kind of address Cynthia's concern about the bikes, I live on this street and bikers are usually on the road since there's a good like parking lane on the south side of the road. I've never seen bikers like on the sidewalk, so I don't know what to do with that, but that's just my comment about the bikers.
Okay. Thank you, Janie. That's good input. So maybe after, let's think. So Janie asked her question and then Joseph, you had a comment similar to Cynthia's, it sounds like. Would you like to make it?
Yeah, I can try to make this really quick, but basically similar to like Cynthia's, I don't really like that. Like there's like shared like roadway and like sort of like that would be like shared for bikers. And I feel like since like looking at Juniper Street, there's like a big parking lane on the side of the road. And like in the diagram that of the like the proposed changes, like there would be a lot of space for like sidewalk pedestrian areas. I feel like some of that could be like changed into bike lanes, just for like biker safety, but that's just like personal opinion.
Thank you, Joseph. Sorry, there was an airplane flying by. Thank you, Joseph. And then, so we haven't heard from Erica yet. So Erica, would you like to comment?
Sure. I was just, yeah, in the same vein of things as Jamie, where with this and then some of the previous projects we talked about with the roundabouts going in at this intersection with Newport and then I think if I'm remembering right, there's one slated to be at Holly. This just seems like a really excellent little corridor considering like everything that's around there, like all the parks, retail, and then the school that's close by. And so that does actually, now that I'm kind of thinking that out loud, coupling what with Joseph just said, like maybe, yeah, expanding to where I don't know if like a lot of kids are going to be walking to school or biking or something, where like maybe just minimizing potential, um, even just like bike ped collisions. I'm not sure how often that happens, but I don't know. I'm wondering if there's going to be some bikers who are less comfortable, or what does that be? LTS one, in that area. So I don't live on Juniper, so I think, yeah, folks who live around there are going to have a much better picture of that than I am. But
To address the comment about like kids walking to school, I think kids usually walk along Holly since it's a lower trafficked street, and that's the street that the school drop off is actually on. So I think that's just what I've observed from living here. So I don't know.
okay, good.
Okay, and yeah, and maybe that bike ped conflict and or the school route, as the city is moving from kind of the conceptual design into 30%, that can be a conversation with the district about some of those safety needs. And then Julian, you had a comment?
Yeah, basically what everyone's talking about. I do like the shared use path, particularly with the new development coming on in a few years, just on the other side of Newport here. So I think that'll be useful for people going to Gilman Village and whatnot, on that entire shared use path. I think it meets the goal of trying to fill in the gaps for general pedestrian use. I do ride on Juniper a lot. I mean, I'm kind of comfortable with just going on the general lanes, but that intersection in general, I do think that needs some protection for bikes. But other than that, I think it meets the goals.
Okay, thank you. So just, it sounds like most of the comments a lot of the comments we've heard, if I could summarize, sounds like, oh, and Micah has a question, but before I get to Micah's question, just sort of quickly to summarize, it sounds like a lot of people, the few people who've spoken, it does look to achieve the goals that were set out for the project. So the answer to that sounds like it's yes. And it sounds like there is some concern about a shared use bike ped 12-foot facility. And so if there's a possibility of separating bike ped as you move through design, and ensuring that, especially if this is going to be potentially a route to school, that sort of safety is considered. And then, sorry, Micah, you had a question?
Yeah, no problem. I think I got buried. I was wondering whether this project would eliminate parking along the road that I'm seeing like in Google Maps.
No, I don't think we were considering parking on the road, but it's not specifically called out in the description of the project. I don't know, John, if you had anything with the history of the development of this project, but I don't have information on keeping.
I don't know too much about that part other than I think it might have been in the walk and roll plan, but I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, that the project itself was in the walk and roll plan?
think so. However, I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to double check it.
Okay.
And we can look at the street parking too.
Yeah, I just always have a concern with removing parking. Certainly, you know, a future where we have such fantastic other transit options that we're at that point would be, you know, great. But right now, especially people that I've been someone that's relied on street parking like that before for where I've lived, and to have that go away would make, you know, for me, my experience, that would have been a huge negative impact to my life. So I definitely would be concerned if this does remove street parking, and if it does, I would be curious if there's an option to still meet most of the goals or all the goals we need to meet with not eliminating, or at least eliminating the least parking possible.
Thank you, Micah. So I think you, Isabel, do you feel like you have a good amount of feedback for this one?
Yes.
And so, yeah, it sounds like in general, we do feel that this project, as it's evaluated, meets the needs. But that, you know, the shared use path and then the parking are a couple of things to evaluate moving forward in design. And then Christy agrees with Micah's comment about the parking and making sure that there's more parking. And Janie has to leave, so thank you, Janie. It was nice to see you, and we'll see you next week or next month. Okay, and so I think we can move on to the second project.
3 trails crossing improvements. This is the second phase of this project. The main goal of this project is to improve the intersection safety and the level of service by possibly restricting vehicles from turning left from Juniper here onto Rainier. So a little bit of history of this project. Right now, it looks a little bit different than the aerial photo for the first phase, because for the first phase, Gilman Love's development had removed the pedestrian signal that was located farther to the west on this area. And they had installed, along with their driveway here, they had installed a traffic signal here to provide for improved pedestrian crossings. And the crossing, the reason why it's called 3 trails is because of the crossings for Sammamish, Rainier Boulevard, and Juniper trails. So this project will be the second phase, which would include the improvements in Juniper and Rainier. And then we will be evaluating the access entering Rainier Boulevard from Juniper, being so close now to the newly installed signal at this location. And if you have had the opportunity to be at this intersection, you will notice that also for pedestrian safety, now it has what we call the pedestrian scramble, which stops traffic in every direction to provide the right of way to the pedestrians and bicyclists crossing the street. So the cost of this project is approximately $3 million. And the change that we proposed, it was a minor change just with the description of the project. The description was basically outlining what the phase 1 of the project was. And now what we want to do with the description is to outline more what the second phase of the project will be, which is evaluating the turnings here left from Juniper to Rainier, and kind of reminding what the main goal of this project is, which is improving the intersection safety and the level of service, and possibly reducing this left turn here and other ways that we could do that. We will be asking the board if restricting this left turning movement from here would provide added safety to vehicles and also other modes of transportation.
Okay, and as everyone is thinking of their answer, just one thing to note. So right now Cynthia is typing in the chat, but honestly, if you have comments, we'd love to hear your comments out loud so they can be in record. I don't mind saying them, but I think it's better in your own voice. So even though Cynthia's chatting, if you have comments or questions, just write comment or question in the chat and definitely feel free to share. Personally, as somebody who uses that intersection a lot, I would love to see that left turn restricted. So I think because there are 3 trails intersecting in that area, I think it does achieve a goal of reducing conflict and improving pedestrian and traffic safety.
I concur.
I'm not sure what, like, if I have thought enough about it to make a recommendation of what specifically needs to change. I just know that when I first drove that intersection about a year and a half ago when I moved here, I was just panicked. And so I think any change would honestly be an improvement. But yeah, there's just so many multiple things to be looking out for, whether it's pedestrians, other cars turning from like weird directions. It's just a confluence of streets. So whether it's like more and or better signage, or at like, I think for me, that's almost like a bare minimum, or just, yeah, eliminating a turn or something. I agree, something needs to change.
Thank you. Well, does anybody want to just nod maybe if we're all in agreement about this one?
Looks like Cynthia had a question.
Oh yeah, and now Cynthia has a question. So she just wants to clarify what the project goal would, or what the actual project mechanism would be. So she's asking, are you saying to remove the left turn access so westbound Gilman traffic cannot turn left?
Oh, no. It's right here since the geometry of the intersections, it's like having 2 intersections so close to each other and now having a signal here. Entering Juniper, when you try turning here to the left, it's this movement when you try to, from Juniper, right away after entering, you try to turn left onto Rainier.
Okay, because if so, this might be a problem that makes Front Street worse because it's a way to get around.
Sorry, I actually can talk. I can't talk a lot.
Yeah.
So if you go traveling westbound on Gilman, you make a left onto Juniper, and then you're trying to make a left onto Rainier. So you are on Juniper for that tiny little segment if you were turning west. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying that that's a workaround. That's like a shortcut if Front Street's backed up. So sometimes you come through and Front Street's backed up, so you go right on Gilman, left on, and you make a left there, and then you go left on Rainier and carry on your way. So that would put more load on Front Street and provide more congestion because you can't get around it than if you can't turn left there. So it's just that it would have, I just want to make sure you'd be aware of the unintended consequence.
Yes, and that's important. We look into these other impacts that we will be creating with our restrictions on other streets.
And Cynthia, thank you for that super secret workaround. I'm going to try that next time. even though that whole intersection is bonkers to me, so I tend to avoid it at all possible costs. I think David has a comment.
I use that intersection several times a day, almost every day of the week. It's better now than it was. However, if you're on Juniper and you're going east toward Gilman, painted on the street, big white letters, white lines, do not block. It's so those people turning left from Gilman onto Juniper and then left again on Rainier, or if they're coming east on Gilman and turning right to do that same thing, they get hung up there because people block that intersection. There's got to be a better way to make that information known than just painting the stripes on the pavement. The stop sign that was on Juniper right there at Rainier, so you used to have to pull up to a stop sign and you look to your left to make sure nobody was coming from kind of that U-turn, what I called a U-turn off of Gilman. That's where all the accidents happened. They happened there, and they happened on Gilman itself off of Juniper. If people aren't paying attention to that writing on the pavement, they're going to block that intersection. Then it backs up Gilman, then it causes additional problems. So I use that street every day, sometimes multiple times a day. I'm very familiar with it. My comment is that that's got to be better. I don't even have the right words to say. It can't be just dependent on that painting on the street. It's got to be some other way to say, don't block that area.
Yes, these are additional things that we could look into when we come with this project. And actually, we don't even have to wait on this project to look at this intersection and finding ways to improve the blocking of that area.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. And Erica, I'll just make your comment for you that yes, I think most of us agree that the Issaquah Coffee Company is the only reason we would ever brave that intersection. So I think overall, it sounds like with some of these design concerns addressed, and maybe, in the short term, improving the paintings on the ground so that it is more clear about where people, what not blocking the intersection. Maybe that becomes enough to clean this up, who knows? But if not, then it sounds like overall it's an improvement project that nobody is objecting to. So if that one's good, I think we could move on to the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Southeast 56th Street bike lane. The goal for this project is to provide a connection to East Lake Sammamish Trail by providing a bike lane on the south side of it. And this is we are considering for this one on the original description of the project to use only the existing roadway section with no widening. And we are specifically talking about that short segment between 221st and East Lake Sammamish Parkway. So the cost of this project, as it's currently stand on the description, would be between $300,000 and $500,000. The purpose of the changes that we are proposing is to provide an easier connection to King County Trail and added safety to bicyclists. So So for this reason, we are proposing this change of specifically include 6 foot of protected bike lane right next to 6 feet of sidewalk. And going back to the main goal of the project, providing this connection to the East Lake Sammamish Trail with providing these 6 feet of protected bike lane and sidewalk. Are we meeting these goals? It's important to note that the previous description of the project did not consider any widening, but if we were to put this protected bike lane right next to a sidewalk, we might be looking at maybe minor right-of-way acquisition and widening of the sidewalk area.
Thank you, Isabel. That was actually going to be my question. Are we thinking like a road diet, like reducing the lane widths, or it sounds like it might be some combination of weight? Because if it's a $300,000 to $500,000 cost, I was wondering if it was just a road diet, sort of reduce lane width, or
It
it
was
sounds like it could be both.
I believe it was considered that way at the original description, because we were not including any widening. And it was calling just for a bike lane there. And now what we are proposing, maybe a bike lane on that area might not be feasible or like too safe, considering the areas as we reduce the lane width. It's going to be tight with the existing roadway width, and when we do that, it might pose less safety, or provide less safety as we intend to with the bike lane.
Thank you, Isabel. So it sounds like as staff is sort of reviewing kind of what's feasible either within the existing footprint or, potential, widening the footprint. I think overall, it sounds like, both David and Julian and Joseph, they're all in agreement. I'm in agreement that Cynthia's in agreement. Feels like a very high positive bang for the buck kind of improvement that really just sort of hits all of the priorities that the Transportation Board has talked about, which is, improving non-motorized connectivity, increasing safety. So this one definitely feels like it would get a 2 thumbs up from the board. And then that being said, also, I think Jerry has a comment.
I'm probably one of those LTS4 bike riders. I'm fearless, but I always noticed that this intersection was unsafe. So yes, for $300,000 to $500,000, what you're doing is along with the sidewalk, you're going to have a bike lane there. But I have noticed in that area, there's very few people using the sidewalk. And so to get access and to cross the trail, the cross to going north on the trail, most bike riders get onto that sidewalk and sort of do a U-turn at the trail to wait for the light. And so I'm just not sure if you guys have studied this use here. And actually, my comment is the bike lane seems to work fine unless the goal is or the sidewalk works fine, unless the goal is for the bike lane is for people to cross to the other side. And I wasn't sure how much traffic there was that way. So that's my comment.
I kind of concur with Jerry. I do think the connectivity to the other side of the intersection is pretty important. I'm also kind of on the LTS4 side of a cyclist, and this intersection in particular is kind of perilous. But I do think, sometimes I do end up on that other side. So I think they're somehow managing the alignment such that you don't have to be squeezed into the other side of 56 would be ideal. And as always, I think a road diet for the crossing of East Lake Sammamish would be good, just because that crossing is pretty perilous too. So those are my 2 comments.
Thank you, Julian. And then Cynthia's comment was that she feels that the connection to the King County Trail is the highest priority, but it would be good to ensure that the new bike lane can accommodate the occasional cyclist going straight. So Jerry, Julian, the workaround is a good one where you can wiggle around, but as this street is being reevaluated for bike lanes, that's something to consider as well, as there could be the occasional cyclist wanting to go straight to connect to some of the office parks, et cetera, that are further up ahead. So I think overall we have a good amount of feedback for you all as far as that this is something that really excited the board and interested us in seeing it pursued.
And thank you for providing all your comments. It has been really helpful, or very will help a lot through our process here. So there's no other questions or comments, so we can move on to the next one. There's a quick comment from David, I think.
Takes longer to unmute. Just so you know, I'm an LTS4 on that crossing on my bike as well. My friend Bill Freisinger and I call that Darth Vader crossing right there.
Thank you, David. So, Jetta, I am not seeing you anymore, so can we move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. And Isabel, I apologize. I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason you got a little bit quieter.
Yes, I think I think maybe I need to be like very close to the microphone to be heard. Yeah, I have noticed that on the meetings, but yeah, it seems like that's the workaround. But thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Okay, next project is Gilman, 3rd Avenue area. Did we have any other comments, Sujata? I kind of saw something
Yeah, sorry.
popping
Okay,
out.
Micah, you had a comment?
Yeah, just quickly. So people make comments about a road diet for that, and I was just thinking. I took a while to comment about the current use of that road, and I guess I'd be a little surprised that you can reduce the lanes without having a significant impact in congestion there, because certainly at sometimes of the day it's pretty empty, but that's a important connector to different parts of Issaquah and to Sammamish.
Yeah. Sorry, Micah, just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting reducing the number of lanes. I was more wondering about reducing the lane width. So,
okay.
There's a.
I guess I assume road diet often refers to reducing the number of lanes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why, in this particular case, the width was what I was mentioning.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is a major through roadway, so that totally is a good point and a good clarification.
Yes, and to add on a little bit to that, even though it won't be a significant change in the capacity of the intersection, reducing the width of lanes would have some impact to capacity. Not as big as it would be like removing lanes, but reducing vehicle lanes does impact a little bit on capacity.
All right, so, on to the next one.
Okay. Gilman and 3rd Avenue, shared use path. So the goal of this project is to improve the bicycle and pedestrian mobility and safety. This project will construct a combination of bike lanes and shared use paths. So the bike lanes is considered on the Gilman portion of the road, the one that is narrower, like the one we are seeing on this picture. And the shared use path is considered on the portion of 3rd Avenue when the roadway narrows a little bit more. This bike lane, the wider portion of Gilman runs pretty much from Front Street where 3rd Avenue starts, and the shared use path will be from where Gilman ends to Sunset Way. The specific bike lane facility will be determined as we go through the design of this project. And the cost of this project ranges from $3 to over $4 million as the way it has been defined. The changes that we are proposing for this project is to specifically call the bike lane to be an LTS2 or better, and to include sidewalks on both sides of the street. And the reason for this change is to provide more detailed information on the improvements and the desired level of comfort for the new bikeway facility. So this area here that we are showing is for the narrower part of the project, or the section named as 3rd Avenue, where we would have a shared use path on both sides of the road. And if we think if we think about the providing the feedback to this project, and we think about the goal, again, is to improve the bicycle and pedestrian mobility and safety along the corridor. For this one, I will help out with providing the first comment from Tom. He did mention that it seemed like on this particular area, the narrower part, 3rd Avenue, 24 feet of shared use path here was a lot to add on to the character of the area.
Micah?
I just want to agree with that comment.
And then Julian, you have a comment?
Yeah, going on to the Gilman side of the project, I know it's a little bit of a touch radical, but are there any thoughts about reducing that to 1 lane each side and then going from there? I do think there's that place in general, I think, is underutilized for bikes and everything else. Just some clarification there.
We could take that into consideration. Thank you, Gillian, for your comment. You are asking if we could only include the shared use path on one side of the street instead of both sides.
No, I'm more referencing reducing Gilman.
Oh, the
just
Gilman
to 1
portion.
lane each side. Just the general traffic lane.
Oh,
taking out one of those lanes.
On this area here?
Yes, so there's 2 lanes of general traffic. You could take out 1 on each side.
I think John wanted to add something.
Yeah, no, I think that's something we can definitely look at, because it might make it a little bit easier to accomplish this project. And like you said, it is kind of an underutilized area.
I mean, the right of way there is 200 feet, so I think as Issaquah continues to grow, that is definitely a place where new things should be able to come in, and yeah.
Thank you, Julian. And then just in general, looking at the chat, it sounds like Jerry and David both fully concur with this plan. And then, or with this improvement and evaluating this improvement. And then Cynthia had a question, and she wanted to know if the ped only crossing over the East Fork would remain non-motorized. And if so, she would love, love, love for that to remain non-motorized. And it would be a special path available only to the non-motorized. So that could maybe be a piece of design consideration.
Yeah, I can add a little bit onto that. This project would replace that with a non-motorized bridge that would be wider, but it would be non-motorized. It would not be a motorized crossing.
Excellent. That's a good piece of information to have. So I think, unless, some of the other members of the board who haven't really spoken up, if anyone else has any other comments, we'd love to hear from you all. Otherwise, so far, I think it sounds like the board is very supportive of this project. And then, David has a comment.
Just really quick, John, I really concur with that. That little bridge is great, but you can only get one bicycle on there at a time, and it's well used by bicycles. So widening that would be great, and I totally agree. As an old Issaquah, just keeping that unmotorized is just a wonderful little bonus for all of us who ride bicycles a lot and have for years. And a quick one for my friend who just commented about the non-use of that. To give you some history, that's the old Highway 10, that from the XXX up to the corner, that was a Highway 10. That was the main route from Seattle east. So now you know, but you wouldn't know that from past. Sorry to throw that in there, but it means something to me.
Yeah, it's a good piece of history, David. Maybe we can call it the Highway 10 pedestrian non-motorized as an homage. That'd be awesome. It's the history of this, the way the city grew is always so interesting. So okay, so I think overall it sounds like the board is very supportive. Are you guys getting this theme that anytime you want to add bike lanes or non-motorized, we all start smiling and are very happy. So so far I think that the board is very supportive of this evaluation of this project as well. So if we want to move on to number 6.
Thank you for your input. 6 to 20th, bike lanes. The goal of this project will be to aid the bike network by connecting the employment areas to the East Lake Sammamish Trail. This project will be constructing 5-foot bike lanes along 220th and 51st Street on that section that close to that section that we were just talking about on 56, but on the other side, on the north side of 56. It is assumed that this project can be accommodated within the existing roadway section, so no widening. And in order to do that, we will need to accomplish restriping and removal of the median on 51st Street and repurposing the two-way left turn lane on 220th to be able to accommodate the bike lane. To be able to do this project, also signal modifications may be required at 220th and 56th Street, since we will be removing one lane from that approach to the intersection. The estimated cost of this project is approximately or 700 or a little over 700. I think I am seeing a few comments popping up, but yeah, the cost of the project will be over the $700,000, and no changes are being proposed for this project. And the main reason is because project modifications may have impacts to capacity. And since we are currently going through doing concurrency updates, we are not proposing any changes until this process is complete. But we will still be asking the board if the scope proposed as the way it's currently described on this project would meet our goals and our goals of connecting these employment areas to the East Lake Sammamish Trail.
I think David and then Julian.
So would that also include 51st that you're going to put bike lanes on as well?
Yes.
Okay, just one comment as a former bus driver. If you look on the side, you'll see that that's a bus route that goes through there. And there is a bus layover on the 51st Street. That's not that important, but I just need you to know that my guess is if you put that bus lane in there, definitely you're going to have to contact Metro to get rid of that bus layover. And that's the only comment I had.
Well, and maybe not necessarily getting rid of the bus stop, but there's ways that we can look into how we can accommodate the bike lane and with the bus stops. Thank you, David.
So I think this is a fantastic project because this is actually also a good way to bypass the perilous crossing at 52nd and yeah. So it's a great way to bypass that crossing. I usually take it from basically 62nd all the way up and then get on to East Lake Sammamish. So I think that's great. And the medians, I'm not sure how many turns there are into the various employment facilities. Can you have that answer off the top of your head?
Yeah, so that's when we think about removing turning lanes and removing medians, and that's one of the things that we have to consider and evaluate how much turning is being used in those areas and how that would impact the rest of the traffic since we are having one lane only on each direction.
But I generally think this is just fantastic improvement. So I completely
Thank you for
agree
your
with that.
comments.
Thank you, Julian. And then, so it sounds like overall the board is supportive of this one as well, and that is good news. So, if there aren't any other comments or concerns, then I think we can move on to project number 7.
Okay, so project number 7 was one of the sidewalk tier gaps. So we will be advancing to project number 8.
Oh, okay.
Sunset Way multimodal improvements. This project has been identified in the walk and road plan to include a cycle track. Back then on the walk and road plan, it was identified as a cycle track and to address operational issues with left turning movements at intersections along the corridor. This would be accomplished through roadway widening, approximately for over 2,000 linear feet of roadway widening, including parking lanes, curb and gutter, drainage, trees, sidewalks and crosswalks, and traffic calming devices. And for this project, modifications will most likely be needed to the existing signal and geometry at Front Street intersection in order for this project to be completed. The cost of this project ranges over $15 million. And the proposed changes that we are including are to provide safety improvements also on Sunset Way and Fifth Avenue because of the history of collisions at this intersection. And also to include a bike facility instead of specifically to be a cycle track to be determined. Since we no longer know if a cycle track is appropriate, and because a cycle track would potentially eliminate on-street parking on this area, we are noting that also with that this bike facility will be LTS2 and would include this project sidewalks on both sides for this project. So since this project we don't feel totally sure what is going to be needed for this project, we will most likely start to engage the community. And since we will be engaging the community in the future for this project, the question that we will be asking the board for this project is a little bit different. So the question that we are asking, or the feedback we're getting from the board on this one specifically, is what issues would you like to be solved at Sunset?
Okay. Thank you, Isabel. And I think John had a quick question, and then Erica has a comment, and Jerry has a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a little bit of the history on this one. About 5 years ago, the city was doing a bond measure and looked at Sunset and analyzed different alternatives, but the council never adopted an approved concept on it. And so as we talk to do the public involvement process for this project, over the long run, that'll be part of the process, is to get a preferred concept, because that never was done.
Thank you, John. And then Erica, and then Jerry.
Oh, mine was actually about the last one, but I
Oh.
just didn't know if, yeah, like that 222nd might be kind of a welcome relief for folks that don't want to bike the parkway, and then just for that, it's a small amount of blocks, but then they can hop up, or for like lower LTS folks or whatever, like not as confident bikers.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a total 1, 2, maybe. The East Lake Sam Trail is about my level of comfort. So yeah, I hear you on that one. Okay, Jerry, do you have a comment on this, on project number 8?
Yes, I had a comment, but first I had a question. So is this mainly at Front Street and Sunset Way intersection, or does it go further east? All the way.
Yes,
it goes
it will
all the
go
way
further east.
to exit 18, perhaps, or up that hill.
Yes. The way
okay.
it's originally described is from front all the way to further east to the ramp of I-90.
Yeah, I believe this is really necessary because this is an unsafe, scary area. But I was just wondering, because I remember what John was saying about, the issues that came about, I guess it was 5 years ago. And I always wondered why, there wasn't some path to the south, maybe through where that dollar store is, perhaps. Maybe you could be directing bikes a different way to save money. But if you're going to go through this public involvement, it's definitely really needed. I'll say that. But there's probably a lot of different options, and you're not really thinking about the options now. We're just saying it is a good project. It is an unsafe area. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Jerry. And again, to the board, the kind of feedback that Isabel is looking for is really, it sounds like, which different priorities are we looking to solve in this one? So if folks have comments about which priorities, and then I think Julian and David, Julian, you had a comment?
Yeah, so I think the top priority you should be looking for when you're doing the public engagement is how people want to get to the Highlands Access Trail. and then how people want to get to the trails in general on Tiger Mountain, right? Just by walking on East Sunset. And in particular, that corridor is pretty unsafe as it is right now, and I feel like it should have come earlier, particularly with the spar closing the other side of the trail up to the Highlands. But I think another big important thing is to coordinate with WashDOT on this, particularly for the intersection that separates Sunset from the Highlands access trail. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Julian. David?
Two quick comments. One is as a avid biker who's goes up on the Highlands. If you wanted to bike from the Highlands down to Issaquah, yes, you can take the trail down, but it's going to divert you to the north end of Issaquah instead of being able to cross I-90 and then just drop down into Issaquah. We need to do that safer. But after what John said, and longtime resident of Issaquah, I know there's some businesses along Sunset Way, and that's going to be a real issue. That's going to be a real hurdle to get them on our side of doing this. I hope I've said that the right way and politically correct way. One business has been there for years, since the 30s, and I know that they will fight anything that happens along Sunset. But I totally agree. There's got to be a way to come down on a bicycle or a walking sidewalk so that you can walk across that I-90 crossing and walk down the hill from on Sunset into downtown. And we don't have that now. It's not safe. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. And okay, so Cynthia has a comment. She said, I think the challenge here is that this road segment has to do a lot for a lot of different users. So we will, so she's definitely agreeing with needing to invest in the upfront process to make sure we get this right. So it sounds like, you know, with mobility being a priority for you know, safe non-motorized mobility for traffic, for cars, parking, business, you know, access to businesses. So there's going to be a lot happening. And so, yeah, that upfront public process to really understand how people use this street versus adjacent streets and move around. It sounds like that's going to be, it's, you know, and it sounds like that's exactly what the city's looking to do, is that public engagement process. And so that will be invaluable, I think, as you guys are moving forward. So yeah, and then, you know, we, are there any other comments on this one? Okay, if not, then I think we're making good time, which is awesome. But you know, I think we have this on the agenda till about 7:50, so I think maybe we should be able to get through a couple more. So
Yes,
that's exciting.
I'll try to go there. But if not, we can always retake, since these are individual projects, we can always retake that in a future meeting, just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Restriping Black Nugget. The goal of this project is to improve the roadway capacity, safety, and efficiency along Black Nugget. This project will include the addition of an uphill bike lane on Black Nugget between East Lake Sammamish Parkway and Issaquah Fall City Road. After a site review, we had found that this roadway was too narrow to accommodate a restriping and provide bike lanes, would require widening of Black Nugget or removal of the two-way left turn lane. And then because of the large retaining wall that we are just looking at this picture here on the north side, and some driveway grading issues on the south side, it would become really difficult to widen this roadway. The cost of this project is estimated between $400,000 to over $600,000. And to provide the changes that we will be proposing would be removing the center turn lane to provide an uphill bike lane, and narrowing the through lanes as well. But repurposing the existing two-way left turn lanes to provide bike lanes may require signal modifications on East Lake Sammamish Parkway and Issaquah Fall City Road. And also, the other thing that we should mention is that we, before we get into removing any two-way left turn center lane, we will need to evaluate the turning movements at Home Depot and Fred Meyer driveways.
Okay.
And to remind again, the goal is to improve the roadway safety and efficiency on this area, if we would be accomplishing this with the project scope and the changes that we are proposing.
Thank you, Isabel. I think Joseph has a comment, and then Christy has a question.
Yeah, I have a really quick comment. I feel like my main concern for this one, because I looked at it like on Google Maps, and I noticed that it's really, really hilly, and especially in the fall and winter time, like when it becomes really rainy or snowy, the road can become like sort of icy or just like slippery, and that might be like hazardous for cars or like bikes. And I feel like it'd be better if it was a protected bike lane rather than just like a regular bike lane where like a car could like accidentally skid into the bike lane. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah.
Thank you, Joseph. Christy? Christy, are you on mute?
Sorry about that. So first of all, my thought was similar to Joseph, so thank you for your point. Secondarily, my question is, what is the speed limit on that road?
It's 25 miles per hour, I think.
Okay. I suspect a lot of people speed on that. So I'm glad to see that you're going to evaluate turn movements as well. Thank you.
Yes, and also to add on to like just Joseph's point about the having a protected bike lane, if we were to use the existing roadway width, we could provide some with removing the center two-way left turn lane. We may be able to provide some protection for the bike lane. If we were using the existing width, however, it wouldn't be the fully protected bike lane. We could add some level of protection.
Thank you. And then Jerry?
I kind of have a strong opinion about this road. I'd be really worried for drivers to eliminate that middle left turn lane because the road is very windy and curvy and the cars do go fast. And it's not just the Home Depot Fred Meyer intersection. There's that office building and University House and a lot of other places that you have to pull into. This is very unsafe for bikes now. I agree, but I don't think because of inadequate sight distance and the road being so curvy, I don't think it's safe to eliminate that left turn lane because there's a lot of places where people have to make those left turn lanes. So maybe I'm going too far into design, but anyway, as a biker, you know, you have to ride on the sidewalk and it's just not really a safe road. And those are my opinions about it. So I don't think it's going to, this proposal isn't going to satisfy any safety requirements.
Thank you, Jerry. Erica?
I agree with pretty much everything that Jerry said. I go to that for my all the time. And so even with a turn lane there, and I don't think it's not a terribly long one. So if there's like a little bit of a wait, just if it's like a high traffic time, I've had to, like really like hit the brakes if I like coming around, because I think you come around that corner and then the turn lane kind of just starts there. And so now I'm worried if you take out that lane that you're just gonna be coming around that corner and like you don't, at least you have like a little bit of like, oh, like got to get over the way it's set up right now. But I don't, it kind of worries me. But I hear the need for the bike lanes. There's just a lot of like things going into this where like you have it's on a hill, people do speed, and it's coming around that corner until like you have a lot of folks wanting to go left into like the retail center there. So
I would agree with Jerry and Erica on this one. That definitely I understand the need for the wanting to put in the bike lane, but this road is such a messy road. And so removing, especially for people, who love that Fred Meyer, removing that turn lane could be a problem. So I would agree with them on that one. And then Julian.
Yeah, this one's a tough road. When I occasionally do go up this way instead of Highlands Drive, it's always difficult for cars behind me to get around me. Maybe the middle lane makes it a little bit easier. But I had a question about the retention wall replacement. How is the timeline for that and then this project? How many years apart is that going to be?
John, you have a little bit more information on that one?
I missed the question. I had some background noise. What was
it? Was the timeline for the project of the retaining wall?
I think the retaining wall design begins in 2023 and probably continues into 2024. And construction really depends on funding. Could start in 2024 or 2025, but construction's currently unfunded.
And I'm assuming it's probably gonna be the same dimensions here. It won't be moved a little bit up, or
it was pretty similar. I know we've done some preliminary concepts on it, and there might be a few changes, but it was pretty similar. But
okay.
As we can take the input from this with the retaining wall project, we'd want to merge it all together to make sure in the long run everything works out.
I definitely do think that there should be some sort of, at least a little bit of a shoulder here, because it's just such a tight road for biking up.
Yeah. And John, one thing I was going to wonder about is with that retaining wall project, is there a way to put the non-motorized facility behind the retaining wall? So everything on the you have your road, even though based on the slope of that hill, you might wind up having to stick another retaining wall in. So you're basically, but I wonder if, if you're doing upgrades to the retaining wall, if there's a way to put your facility behind the retaining wall, your non-motorized facility, and keep the road complex for the motorized. And so you're really separating uses. But again, based on the slope, I don't know if that would be adding another 12-foot path might just completely mess up your cut and fill and all of that. But
right. I think also the limited right of way would really make that a challenge.
Oh, okay.
But it would be fun. It'd be a very fun
You
project.
completely separate everybody. Okay, and then David had a comment and Jerry had a comment, and then I think if they can keep it quick, because just time check at 7:47. So I think after this one, we'll want to move to start moving to reports.
Yep.
So go ahead, David and Jerry.
Mine's just real quick. That road is a transit corridor. The 269 uses that corridor. So if you take away that turn lane out of the center, a lot of motorists use bus. There's, I think, 5 stops on the hill before you get to where you can get up to the Highlands. So when buses stop, obviously, motorists use that turn lane as a passing lane to get around the stop bus. So that's going to be even more of a detriment to take away that turn lane. I just wanted to throw that in there. It's definitely going to affect the buses. So, and those buses, non-pandemic, there were quite a few people who rode the buses up to the Highlands because they would get on right there by Fred Meyer and Home Depot and use that as a shopping stop. So I needed to say that for you guys to consider, to know that that's going to be in there. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Jerry?
I just happen to agree with Julian and what John was saying, but I guess you don't have enough right of way, but maybe if you're replacing that retaining wall, maybe you can make a wider shoulder at that time and it'll cost a little bit more, and that might be the solution. So I would say that perhaps number 9, you should just wait until the retaining wall is replaced and maybe combine it as one project or something.
Yeah, that's a good way to maybe close this out on this particular project. It sounds like the board does not necessarily feel that the way this project number 9 is being described would meet our goals. And so it sounds like from the comments today that maybe the board is feeling like either A, we pause on number 9 and let the retaining wall projects happen with this feedback integrated into the retaining wall project. But that maybe the board is feeling like the way this project is described is not going to meet the goals otherwise from the safety perspective. Can I just get a nod from the board to make sure that this is in fact, okay, that sounds like that's the case. So number 9, we're not ready to necessarily support based on the goals that we're looking for. Okay, so I think we have completed, this was really, you guys, this was amazing. So much feedback, and I hope, Isabel, you feel like you got the feedback you needed.
Yes,
and
yes,
the
and we
level of
can we can pause with this project, Sujata, and yeah, we only have like three projects more to discuss, and we can bring these. As I said, these are separate projects, so we don't have necessarily to tie these into anything specific, but we can separate some a few minutes on a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to everybody on the board for coming so prepared and having like really robust and detailed feedback for staff. So I think now we can move on to the reports. It looks like maybe the board work plan is the first report.
Yes, let me stop sharing my screen so we can.
Oh, hey, everybody.
Bring the Board work plan, yes, will be the next item. So I will be for the next meeting in September, will be September 16th. We have a few items on the agenda for the next meeting, and we are going to confirm if all of the topics, if we are ready for all of the topics, or we would be moving some of them. But the items that we had in discussion is to continue with the Transportation Improvement Program project update in the September meeting, discuss transit system, and the Northwest Sammamish Road non-motorized project discussion also that we had scheduled for this meeting, but we had to move for the next one. And we also have for that meeting the racial equity discussion. So we probably want to discuss if whether there are a few of those topics that could be moved to another meeting or because yeah, we have 4 topics on the agenda, so we probably want to discuss if we would continue with those 4 topics or move things around.
Okay, Isabel, is that, do you need feedback from us now, or is that something we should think about and then?
No, I think we can do with the board shares check-in later. We can make that decision.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if that's what we have on board work plan, let's move on to a staff report.
Yes, so for the staff report, I'll start first and then we'll leave John to continue. I have an interesting announcement. We just applied last week for a grant application on 12 and 900 project. That project is currently on design, and we have secured funds for the design and for the right-of-way phase of that project. So the grant application is for the construction to secure. We are positively hopeful that we would get this grant, and if we do, we would get $3 million for construction funds for the 12 and 900 improvements. Then I will head over to John if he has.
I've got a couple items. The first one is this weekend, Al Fresca on Front Street starts, and it'll go for 4 weekends. The city staff are working on putting together the budget, and that'll get published this fall, and then the council will have budget deliberations, but there'll be a number of transportation items included in the budget. And this fall, we're going to begin design on a couple overlay projects that we got grant funding for. The first one's on East Lake Sammamish Parkway, and it'll go from Black Nugget Road to Southeast 50th, which that is just a little street just north of 51st Street. The project limits were based on what looked like would score the best in the grant application. And then on Southeast 43rd from the roundabout up to where the new pavement is near the Providence Ridge subdivision. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, John. So is that it for staff report?
I think that would be it, unless Stephen has anything to add. Nope.
He's still on mute, so I'll assume no. And we can circle back to Stephen if he does. Chair report, Cynthia, do you have anything? No? Okay, and I don't, except for being super excited about Al Fresca on front. I don't have anything else to add. And then my fears that now schools are starting on the 31st. So everybody wear your patience hats and be prepared for many, many buses and children and all of that, because we've all enjoyed this summer without all of that and a lot of last year. But 31st, it's full steam ahead for the school district. So I'll just put that out there as well. And put your children on buses if you can, and wear a mask and open your window and use public transportation or district transportation. And then lastly, the youth report. So I don't know if we have a youth report today, Joseph.
Yeah, I kind of have a youth report. So essentially, I'm working on the city proposal for basically like increasing the number of electric vehicle spots or to like incentivize like the shift towards electric vehicles. I haven't really finished it up yet, but eventually I might reach out to you guys for like sort of help on like petition, just like signing it. But yeah, I just wanted to give you all a heads up.
Thanks, Joseph. That's a cool idea. Okay, so I think we're through the reports. One other, I don't know if anyone, Isabel, if anyone is signed up for, I don't see anyone else for public comment, but I mentioned at the top of the meeting, if anyone had any comments, we could bring it to the end of the meeting. So I don't know if there's
Yes.
anyone there.
Yes, I don't see anything.
Okay, great. So that's good news. So a few other business announcements. The next meeting is scheduled for September 16th, 6 p.m. And then if there aren't any other comments, I think we could be ready to adjourn.
And the meeting is to still be from our homes in Zoom, correct?
Yeah, I think the city is still looking at virtual.
Yeah, it's my understanding that, and I can't remember if it's either until or through November, boards and commissions will still be meeting online.
Thank you, John. Someday we'll all get together and do big, design exercise on paper with sticky notes in the real world. I envision it, and it will hopefully happen someday. But okay, so yeah, next meeting will continue to be virtual for a few more months. So if there's nothing else, I think it's 7:59, and we can just adjourn, right? Like we don't have to. Okay, great.
Yes.
So it's 7:59, and I hope everyone has a good night, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sujata. Great job.